Imagine standing at the edge of a battlefield, but not the kind marked by bullets or bombs. This one is made of boardrooms, family dinners, group chats, and first dates. It's the quiet war of identity, where strength is currency and hesitation is weakness. Now imagine walking into that war without armor, without the instinct to conquer, carrying only your honesty, like a torch in the dark. You want to do good in a world that rewards power and punishes sincerity. How long do you think you could survive like that? How long before you are mocked, overlooked, dismissed, not for what you lack, but for what you refuse to fake? This is not just a modern dilemma. This is the fate of countless men across time, a wound Dostoyevsky saw over a century ago. He didn't write heroes, he wrote men on the edge of conscience, of collapse, of revelation, and one of them was Prince Myshkin, the so-called idiot. A man so pure, so honest, so kind. He made the people around him uncomfortable because his goodness was a mirror, and they hated what they saw. Was he a saint or a fool? And what does that mean for you? If you have been told your sensitivity is weakness, if you have learned to hide your compassion, if you are trying to be good in a world built to reward masks, this is for the man who knows he is holding back, who senses his strength is buried under comfort, fear, apathy, or the lie that says, being a good man is enough. Dostoyevsky knew better. He knew suffering wasn't punishment. It was initiation, a stripping away of performance, of illusion, of everything false, so that something real could emerge. He lived it himself, exiled, imprisoned, face to face with death, and what he found on the other side was strength forged in the fire. The strength to kneel without collapsing, to feel without flinching, to lead without needing to be loud. He would tell you, if you do not suffer consciously, you will suffer unconsciously. You will either become hardened and cynical or crushed by the weight of your own decency. So why do honest men suffer? By the end of this conversation, you will see why weakness isn't neutral, why passivity invites pain, why the world doesn't need more nice men, and why Dostoyevsky's darkest insight about men might be the one truth that sets you free. Because the most dangerous man in the room isn't the one who yells or fights or dominates. It's the one who has mastered both his goodness and his darkness and knows exactly when to use each. We like to say we admire honesty. We like to say we value kindness. We pretend we respect those who give without expectation, love without manipulation, and live without masks. But that's not true. Not in this world. What this world actually rewards is cleverness over conscience, style over substance, performance over presence. Look around. We promote the man who knows how to sell himself, not the one who knows himself. We admire charm, even if it's empty. We praise ambition, even when it's ruthless. We call it leadership when someone dominates the room, even if they do it by deception. This is the lie we are fed. Be good, and the world will be good to you. But the truth is, goodness without armor gets eaten alive. And into this exact world steps Prince Myshkin, called an idiot. Not because he was stupid, but because he refused to conform. He doesn't manipulate. He doesn't posture. He doesn't strategize his personality to make others comfortable. He forgives too quickly, speaks too honestly, loves too freely. To love someone, he says, means to see them as God intended them. But what happens when you try to love people like that? Like they are sacred, like they are whole even when they are not? They reject it. They recoil from it. Because when someone sees you with that much clarity, there is nowhere to hide. And that's what makes Myshkin so dangerous. His goodness isn't weakness, it is exposure. He doesn't condemn anyone. He reveals the cowardice, the vanity, the control games that everyone else is playing. And no one likes to be unmasked, especially not by someone who doesn't even know they are doing it. So what do? They mock him, fear him, discard him. Because in a world built on masks, the man without one is treated as a threat. This isn't fiction. This is a pattern. You see it everywhere. The man who gives without needing anything in return is taken advantage of. The man who speaks from the heart is called naive. The man who leads from service instead of ego is ignored until it's too late, because this world doesn't know what to do with a man who doesn't want to win. And here is the real tragedy. It breaks him. Not because he is wrong, but because he is alone. So what are we supposed to do? Is being good a mistake? Is the only way to survive to become like them? That's the question Dostoyevsky leaves hanging in The Idiot. Because the deeper cost isn't just being good. It's being good without wisdom, without strength, without boundaries. Myshkin isn't destroyed because his heart was open. He is destroyed because it was unguarded. There is a difference. Being good doesn't mean being defenseless. Being kind doesn't mean being blind. Being honest doesn't mean being exposed. But that's the mistake men keep making, believing goodness alone will save them. It won't. Not here. Not in a world that turns everything into a transaction, where even your virtue is measured by how well it can be packaged. So no, being good is not the problem. The problem is being unaware of the cost. The problem is walking into the fire without knowing you will get burned. The problem is expecting a ruthless world, to make room for a soul that doesn't play by its rules. The world doesn't destroy good men because they are wrong. It destroys them because they are unguarded, because they don't see what they are up against, because they don't understand that in a world full of masks, the bare face is the first to bleed. So if you are a good man, don't shut down. But don't walk in naked either. Build armor around your soul, not walls, but edges, so that when you stand in the light, you are not crushed by it. You carry it, not for their approval, but because it's who you are. And that's not weakness. That's warriorship. There is a certain kind of man who doesn't lie, who doesn't manipulate, who doesn't play the game, not because he doesn't know how, but because something deep in him refuses to. He walks through the world open and aware, feeling everything, a man of conviction, of tenderness, of truth, and because of that, he suffers. Prince Myshkin is this man. Dostoyevsky did not write him as weak. He wrote him as undefended. A soul so luminous, so unguarded, it became unbearable to those around him. They didn't hate him because he was evil. They hated him because his purity exposed theirs, or rather, their lack of it. He didn't play politics. He didn't protect his ego. He didn't fight back when ridiculed. He stood there, face uncovered, heart open, and in return, he was broken. Not because he was wrong, but because he was unguarded. Just like Dostoyevsky said, a truly beautiful soul is unarmed. That's why it's always wounded. But the sentiment haunts every page of The Idiot. Myshkin was spiritually awake, but emotionally naked. No boundaries, no armor. He mistook goodness for passivity and compassion for surrender. He thought the world would honor what it could not understand, but it didn't. It turned on him, and the tragedy is that many modern men know exactly how this feels. You try to be kind and you are used. You try to be honest and you are mocked. You try to show your heart and you are dismissed as soft. So you start to wonder, is the answer to shut down, to harden, to become one of them? And yet something in you resists that too, because you know that turning cold is not strength, it's decay, it's the slow erosion of everything real inside you. So where does that leave you? Between collapse and cynicism, between the wounded openness of Myshkin and the hollow dominance of the world. This is the quiet suffering of the modern man, not the lack of strength, but the confusion of how to use it, not the absence of emotion, but the fear that showing it makes you weak. But here's the truth. The answer is not to shut down. The answer is to wise up. To see that goodness without boundaries isn't virtue, it's vulnerability without discernment. And that doesn't make you noble, it makes you prey. You must learn to guard your soul, not by closing it, but by choosing where and how it opens. You don't stop being kind, you start being selective. You don't stop being honest, you start being strategic. You don't stop loving, you start loving with strength, Because in the end, a good man is not one who is always soft. He is one who is anchored, one who can say no, one who can walk away, one who can fight when it matters and stand unshaken when tested. Myshkin's mistake was not being too good. It was being too exposed, and in a world full of sharp corners, he was destined to bleed. You still have a choice, and that choice is this: to grow into a new kind of man. Not harder but wiser, not louder but deeper, not someone who performs strength, but someone who embodies it. This kind of strength doesn't dominate, it doesn't impress, it doesn't bend to approval. And when you carry that, you won't need armor, because you will have presence. You won't need to yell because your silence will hold weight. But this isn't the end of your goodness. It's the beginning of your power. Strength is one of the most misused words in the modern world. We talk about it as if it's all posture, how loud you speak, how much control you have, how well you hide pain. But Dostoyevsky had no interest in that kind of strength. He wasn't writing heroes who crushed obstacles, conquered enemies, or flexed their will. He was writing men who broke, and not because they weren't powerful, but because they were divided. To Dostoyevsky, weakness wasn't a failure of power. It was a fracture in the soul, a disintegration, a rupture between mind and heart, faith and reason, intention and action. And when you look at his most iconic characters, you see it play out again and again. Raskolnikov, in Crime and Punishment, kills a woman not out of passion, but out of theory. He wants to prove that he's above morality, that he can think his way out of guilt, that he's not subject to the laws that bind lesser men. But his intellect says one thing, his conscience says another. And slowly, that split tears him apart. He isn't weak because he failed to follow through. He is weak because he followed through with something his soul couldn't live with. Ivan Karamazov, the cold logician in The Brothers Karamazov, declares that he cannot accept a world where children suffer. His mind rejects God not out of arrogance, but out of moral clarity. He's brilliant, principled, and devastatingly persuasive. But logic without faith is not enough to live on. And when faced with the chaos of human suffering, Ivan breaks. His brilliance turns on him, and he is left talking to devils in his own mind, because truth, without something greater to carry, it becomes unbearable. Then there's the underground man, the most modern of them all. He is bitter, hyper-aware, trapped in his own mind. He watches himself sabotage every chance at connection and writes essays about it. Just like he says, "Man is broad, too broad. I would narrow him down." In other words, we contain too much, too many contradictions, too many motives, too much potential for both good and evil, and it makes us unbearable to ourselves. He knows exactly what he was doing and does nothing to stop it. This, to Dostoyevsky, is the essence of weakness, not a lack of strength, but a lack of wholeness. Raskolnikov is strong, Ivan is brilliant, the underground man is painfully aware, but each of them is split, their minds severed from their hearts, their desires from their duties, their beliefs from their bodies. They suffer not just because the world is hard, but because they are not integrated enough to face it. And here's what most men still don't realize. You can be powerful and still be weak. You can be smart and still self-destruct. You can be sensitive and still paralyzed. Weakness is not about capacity, it's about cohesion. So what, then, is strength? To Dostoyevsky, strength is not brute force, not dominance, not stoicism as suppression. It is the painful, humble, spiritual labor of putting yourself back together. It's the man who is self-aware and also self-responsible. The man who sees his own contradictions but refuses to let them paralyze him. It's the man who learns to carry guilt without collapsing, who faces doubt but still moves forward, who feels deeply and acts anyway. Strength is not certainty. It is when the head and the heart are no longer at war, when you stop outsourcing your values to systems or ideologies or trends and start taking ownership for your soul. And that's what Dostoyevsky was trying to show us, that suffering isn't the enemy, it's the map. Meanwhile, the soul aches in the places where it has been split. So if you feel weak, don't harden, don't shut down, don't cling to appearances. Ask instead, what have I abandoned in myself? What part of me is still at war with the rest? Because only a whole man can carry real weight in this world, and only a unified soul can suffer without breaking. For most of our lives, we are told what strength looks like. Loud, dominant, unshakable. A performance of confidence that rarely survives close inspection. You are taught to keep your chin up, hold it together, push through, smile when it hurts, and somewhere along the way, you start to believe that's what it means to be strong. But Dostoyevsky, in all his brutal honesty, offers us something else. He doesn't celebrate the men who dominate others. He doesn't glorify the ones who shout the loudest, or fight the hardest, or hide the deepest. He looks instead to the man who won't betray his soul even when it costs him everything. Because real strength in his world isn't about power. It's about alignment. It's when a man refuses to bend into a shape that keeps him liked but lost. It's when he faces the storm, not with pride, but with presence. And that's the shift most men never make. They spend years trying to look strong without ever becoming strong. However, strength is when your soul speaks louder than your fear. It's the man who can feel grief without drowning in it, who can feel anger without becoming cruel, who can feel love without losing his ground. A strong man in Dostoyevsky's world is not the man untouched by suffering. It's the man who suffers and refuses to harden. The one who bleeds with his eyes open, who chooses truth over comfort, love over manipulation, conviction over convenience. Because in a world that tells you to perform, to posture, to perfect, to pretend, nothing is more radical than simply being real. So if strength is not performance, what is the path forward? To be strong in the way that actually matters, a man must choose to live differently through. Number 1, emotional sovereignty. Feel deeply, but don't beg to be understood. You don't need the world to validate your depth. You need the courage to hold it. 2, spiritual integrity. Stay rooted in what's higher than ego. Your values, your conscience, your sense of the sacred, these are your compass. When the world tries to pull you into games, don't play. Stand still. 3, discernment. Love without losing yourself. Trust, but not blindly. Forgive, but not endlessly. Knowing where you end and others begin, that's not cold, that's clarity. 4, conscious courage. Speak the truth, even when it's costly, even when it shakes things, even when it leaves you standing alone. Because a quiet man who stands in truth is stronger than a loud man who lives in lies. But none of this is instant. There's no switch to flip, no seminar to attend, no shortcut. To move from fragmented to whole, from performative to powerful, from afraid to free, you have to look inward. You have to sit with what hurts. Not escape it, but face it. You have to meet the boy inside you who learned to hide and ask him to trust you now. You have to stop chasing approval and start honoring your own voice. And slowly, you stop performing. You stop pretending. You stop apologizing for your depth. And you realize that strength isn't something you show. It's something you become. And the man who becomes strong in this way, not in show, but in soul, can walk through any room, any storm, any silence with a presence no mask can imitate. There comes a point in every man's life when silence gets too loud, when the distractions don't distract anymore, when the things you chased lose their flavor, and all that's left is you, your choices, your patterns, your pain, your soul. That's when the questions start. What am I doing? What am I becoming? Is this who I was meant to be? If you're here, it means you felt that moment. Maybe you are in it right now. And this isn't about shame. This is about clarity. Because the modern world has no roadmap for a man with a soul. It teaches you to perform, not to reflect, to chase, not to anchor, to succeed, not to become whole. So if you are going to live with depth, if you are going to carry both your strength and your sensitivity, you are going to need a new framework. So here is the path out. Step 1. Wake up. Before you build, you have to see. See the ways you have been performing, the masks you wear to be accepted, respected, wanted. See how often you have silenced yourself to keep the peace. See the lies you have told yourself just to survive. This step will hurt. It will feel like losing something. But what you are losing was never really you. It was the persona you built, so you wouldn't be rejected. Step 2. Anchor inward. When you strip away the mask, you will feel exposed, raw, vulnerable. Don't rush to cover it up again. Instead, build a foundation, one the world can't shake, not made of money or image or validation, but made of silence. Sit with your own thoughts without flinching, because without a core, the world will define you. But with one, you become immovable. Step 3. Move with power. This is the shift from internal clarity to external action. When you know who you are, you speak differently, you walk differently. You stop trying to win people over and start protecting what matters. You speak your truth without needing it to be accepted. You set boundaries without apology. You love with intensity, not insecurity, because now your strength is rooted, not reactive, not manipulative, but clear. But now we reach the real question. Will it be enough when the world tests you? Because it will test you. You will be misunderstood. You will be mocked. You will be tempted to shrink, to numb, to hide. And in those moments, your framework won't save you, but it will hold you. If you have done the work, you will lose some battles, but you won't lose yourself. And that is everything. So now we arrive at the edge, not of a story, but of something far deeper, a threshold between who you have been and who you are meant to become. You have heard the call, not to comfort, not to ease, but to tell the truth. And truth, as Dostoyevsky knew, never comes cheap. Hell is not a pit beneath the earth. It's what happens when a man hides from himself, when he silences the soul's quiet cry with noise, distraction, and lies. But if you have made it this far, something in you already knows. There is no escaping suffering, only choosing what kind. The great thinkers we will walk with, Dostoyevsky, Nietzsche, Jung, Kierkegaard, did not give us comfort. They gave us mirrors, maps, torches for the night. So the question is not whether the fire will come, it's whether you will step into it and be remade. This is the end of the beginning, but not the end of the road, if you're ready to face the next trial, to dig deeper, to suffer wisely, to rise slowly. Then watch the next video. Continue the initiation, because this is not where you fall. This is where you begin to rise.